Merle Haggard heard it and said no. Elvis Presley recorded it and forgot about it. Willie Nelson heard 4 bars, stopped everything in the room, and said, "That one's mine." The song was called "Always on My Mind." By the time it reached Willie Nelson in 1982, it had already lived several lives, passed through several pairs of hands, and failed, quietly, to become what everyone who touched it sensed it could be. It was a song waiting for the right voice. It waited for a decade. And when it finally found what it had been looking for, it won 4 Grammy Awards, spent weeks at #1, and became one of the most recorded songs in the second half of the 20th century. But none of that is where the story starts. The story starts in Memphis, Tennessee, in 1970, in a recording studio late at night, with a man named Wayne Carson sitting alone at a piano, and a phone call he did not want to make. Wayne Carson was a songwriter from Springfield, Missouri. He was not a household name, but he had already written one song that had reached the top of the charts, "The Letter," recorded by the Box Tops in 1967, a song so immediately recognizable that its opening notes were enough to stop a room. He was good at his work, and the people who knew the music industry in Nashville and Memphis knew it. In the spring of 1970, Carson was working at a recording studio in Memphis. The job was supposed to last 3 days. It lasted 10. His wife was in Springfield, waiting. Every time he called, the conversation was the same. He was almost done. He would be home soon, just a few more days. He meant it every time. Every time the work stretched further. On the 10th night, he called again. His wife answered, and this time the conversation was different. She had been patient. She had been patient for 10 days in a way that had used up all the patience she had. She let him know that, clearly, directly, without softening what she felt. He listened. He said he understood. He hung up the phone. But that wasn't the part that stopped everyone when they finally heard the story. The part that stopped them was what Carson did next. He sat back down at the piano, alone in the studio, late at night, in a city that wasn't home, and he wrote the first 2 verses of a song. He wrote them quickly, the way things sometimes come when something true has just been said out loud and the words are still in the air. The melody was already in his head. The words followed it. The song was about a man who had not been present for the person who mattered most to him. A man who had been there in body but absent in every way that counted. A man who had failed to show the love he felt, and who could only offer now the bare and insufficient admission that she had always been on his mind. He did not write a bridge. He listened to what he had and decided it didn't need one. The song was complete as 2 verses and a chorus. He put it away, finished his work in Memphis, and went home to Springfield. What happened next took years and moved through several cities and several pairs of hands before it arrived at the moment that mattered. The song first landed with a producer named Chips Moman, who heard it and thought it needed a bridge after all. Carson disagreed, but Moman was insistent. So Carson sat in an upstairs office of a Nashville publishing house, trying to write something that he did not believe the song required. While he was sitting there, a guitarist named Johnny Christopher came by, and then a songwriter named Mark James, who had never heard the song, stopped in to pick up his mail. The 3 of them sat together for an hour. The bridge that came out of that hour was eventually considered by most people who heard it to be the emotional center of the song. Carson still wasn't sure the song needed it, but there it was. What I'm about to tell you is the part of this story that almost no one knows. The first major artist to record the song was not Elvis Presley. It was B.J. Thomas in 1970, the same year Carson wrote it. That version went nowhere. The bridge wasn't yet part of the song. The recording was quiet and competent, and entirely without distinction. It disappeared quickly, and the song disappeared with it. Then, in March 1972, Elvis Presley recorded it. By then, the bridge had been added, and the song was the thing it would eventually become. Structurally complete, emotionally clear, a song about regret that managed to avoid self-pity through the plainness of its language. Elvis recorded it in a single session. His version was released in October 1972 as the B-side of a single. DJs across the country assumed it was about his marriage to Priscilla, which was dissolving publicly at the time. It reached number 16 on the charts. Not a failure, not a success. A song that arrived without announcement and left the same way. A decade passed. The song existed in the background of things, covered occasionally, remembered by the people who had worked on it, but not yet what it was trying to be. In 1982, a guitarist named Johnny Christopher, one of the three men in that Nashville office a decade earlier, brought the song to two artists. The first was Merle Haggard. Haggard heard it, considered it, and passed. The reasons he gave were practical. It didn't fit what he was working on. The timing wasn't right. But the effect was the same. The song moved on. The second artist was Willie Nelson. Willie Nelson heard 4 bars. He stopped the session he was in, asked for the song to be played again from the beginning, and listened to it all the way through without speaking. When it was finished, he said he wanted to record it. Not eventually, now, that week. The recording session happened quickly. Willie Nelson did not labor over the arrangement or spend weeks finding the right approach. He treated the song the way he treated most things, directly, without overthinking what the audience would want, trusting that what he felt when he sang it was the thing worth communicating. His producer at the time, Chips Moman, the same Chips Moman who had insisted on the bridge 12 years earlier, produced the session. What Willie Nelson did with those 4 bars, and with the 10 that followed, was something that nobody who had previously recorded the song had managed to do. He sang it as though the words were his own. Not a performance of regret, an expression of it. The distinction is small, but everything. An audience can hear the difference between a singer inhabiting a lyric and a singer executing one. And Willie Nelson, on that recording, was inhabiting every word. The single was released on March 6, 1982. It went to number 1 on the Billboard country charts. It crossed over to adult contemporary. The album of the same name went platinum. At the Grammy Awards the following year, Always on My Mind won Best Male Country Vocal Performance, Best Country Song, and Song of the Year. A 4th award followed. The song that B.J. Thomas had recorded quietly in 1970 and Elvis Presley had released as a B-side in 1972 had finally become what it had always been trying to become. Wayne Carson, who wrote the first 2 verses, alone at a piano in Memphis on the night his wife called, received his recognition in the form of the Song of the Year Grammy, shared with Johnny Christopher and Mark James, the 2 men from the Nashville office. He was in his 40s by then. The song had taken 12 years to find its way to the moment it deserved. There is a detail about the song that Carson mentioned in interviews years later, almost as an aside. He said that when he wrote those first 2 verses, quickly, late at night, after hanging up the phone, He was not writing a song. He was writing an apology. He had no intention of showing it to anyone. It was the kind of writing that happens when something true needs to come out, and there is no other container for it. He sat at the piano because the piano was there, and because he had always processed things through music, and because the words that needed to be said had nowhere else to go. He did eventually show the song to people. He did eventually try to find it a home. But the original impulse, the thing that made the words come quickly and land where they needed to land, was private. A man in a strange city, late at night, trying to say something to someone who wasn't in the room. His wife heard the song when it became famous. She recognized what it was. Whether she received it as the apology it had started as, whether that changed anything between them, Carson never said publicly. Some things stay private regardless of how famous the artifact becomes. Willie Nelson has performed Always on My Mind at nearly every concert since 1982. He has said in interviews that it is one of the songs he never tires of singing, not because it is easy, but because the audience never tires of receiving it. There is something in the lyric that lands differently depending on who is in the room and what they are carrying. A song about not showing love well enough is a song that almost everyone in any given audience has lived, from one side or the other. Merle Haggard passed on it. Elvis recorded it and let it go. Willie Nelson heard 4 bars and stopped the room. The difference between those 3 responses is the distance between a song and a standard, between something recorded and something remembered. The most important detail, the one that makes the whole story make sense, is this. Wayne Carson wrote Always on My Mind as an apology that he could not say out loud. Willie Nelson sang it as an apology that everyone in the room recognized as their own. That is the entire distance between a private moment and a song that outlasts the person who wrote it. If there is something you have left unsaid to someone who needed to hear it, drop it in the comments. I read every one. And some of the best ones become the next story on this channel.